Welcome to the 87th episode of the Flip Learning Network podcast. I'm your host, Troy Cockrum. Joining me today is my co-host again, Joan Brown. The Flip Learning Network podcast is brought to you by the EdReach Network, bringing educators a voice, a big voice. On the show today, we're going to be talking with Christy Steffen. Christy, could you tell us what your role is in education?
Yes, thank you, Troy. I'm a technology instructional coach at Noblesville High School, and prior to that, I was a special ed teacher for 11 years.
Okay, and Noblesville High School is in Indiana. It's just north of Indianapolis for those who aren't familiar with it. And it's quite a large district as well. Roughly, what's the size of your district?
We have about 10,000 students total in the district. Our high school has about 2,700 students in it.
Okay. And we brought Christy on the show today because we were just having a discussion about ways to get teachers involved in professional development, whether it be from a tech coaching side or a technology director or an administrator or even a fellow teacher. How can we get our coworkers more involved in professional development? And Christy, you were talking about one of the things you're pursuing is a badge system. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I actually took a MOOC on Canvas, offered a Badge 101, and I was really interested in it. And Canvas is a learning management system that actually our school system uses, but I know a lot are starting to use that. And they have instituted the Mozilla Backpack, which is an open backpack. So it interacts with a lot of different systems, so it wouldn't just be an internal thing. And I was looking at the badges to be able to have the teachers kind of show what they've learned, and to start doing some online professional development where they could earn these badges, maybe to communicate to others what knowledge they do have, but then also maybe to do some, for PGPs or professional growth points or anything like that maybe within our system or within our state for license renewal.
And explain a badge system for anybody who may not know what a badge system is.
Well, in this particular badging system, it's basically an image that you get, or an icon that you would get after completing a certain prerequisite. In Mozilla, the actual image has metadata in it, so that it can't be copied or duplicated without actually being given by a certain system or school corporation or something like that.
And I know I've seen them on Edmodo as well,
yes.
And some other sites that give you certain badges. And I guess it's kind of the whole theory behind like Foursquare and things like that as well. People are more willing to check in when they know they're going to get a badge reward, even though it really doesn't mean a whole lot.
Exactly.
I think we've done our show also on some of the gadgets, and I think a lot of the websites now are trying to post your progress, just to gamify the whole process of doing something online, and it's so motivating for a lot of people. I'm all about it. I love it when I look at the progress on my Fitbit, and they'll give me a little bonus, little star or something if I've done something. I'm like, yay! and I think teachers will probably be motivated by the same sort of thing, especially if their colleagues are going to be involved with them.
One of the people that I just spoke to recently about this, they actually didn't do digital badges, they did actual badges, and the teachers posted them on their doors. And I know that that's probably hard sometimes for teachers, but what started happening is that the students were actually noticing them and going, well, Mrs. Steffen, why don't you have this badge? So-and-so down the hall has already got their badge for that. It became this peer pressure, but also the pressure came from the students for them to achieve more. So, however we can get teachers to continue their learning is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's a motivation. I know before the show, we were just talking about how those badges are a nice emblem for other teachers to go to someone who has the knowledge, or maybe someone who can model something for them. So if they gain a badge in a technology skill, you can say, hey, there's someone who already knows how. You can work with them and get some ideas, and that's helpful, especially in a large school district like yours.
Right. Well, I'm responsible for assisting 150 teachers, so I can't possibly help every single one at all times. But I can kind of crowdsource that help by going, oh, so and so knows a little bit more about that, or if it's a subject that I'm not particularly knowledgeable about, and if there's somebody that's in their same subject area, I can send them to them for support.
That's great.
I was just thinking of a book that I read recently. It's called The Man Who Lied to His Laptop by Clifford Noss, and the whole concept, it's about what motivates people and things like that, and the research shows that people won't lie to a computer because they don't want to hurt its feelings. And it's a complicated book, so I won't go into all the details, but people give computers sort of human characteristics. And I kind of feel like, in a sense, badges are like that as well. It's like people want to earn the badges, and they almost look down on people who don't earn the badge, and it's almost like they're interacting with a computer to earn the badge, but it's motivating for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most definitely. Hey, I was doing a search, and I'm not going to say that I'm an expert, but Microsoft Educators Network, if you join their network, they also have a badge system as you go through professional development on the Microsoft site.
I've heard of that.
So within their environment, in their social networking, you're going to be able to see how you can do against other people working in the Microsoft environment. And then also, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Google Ninja program, the Google Apps Ninja program. So our school, in our Soul School system, is a Google Apps for Education school. And we sort of have the twofold training dilemma. We certainly need the teachers trained on how to use all of the apps, but then, of course, we also need the students trained. And the beauty of the Google Apps Ninja program is it's supposed to fill both of those needs. And it's nice because it's open source. And would you like me to screen share that just for a moment, because I do have it here. Let me do that real quickly. So here's the site, and it is a template that you can ask the owner, and his name is, and I don't want to mispronounce it, but it's Jeff Utek, I believe. He is offering this template to anyone if you simply want to write to him, and he will let you download the entire template. And the idea is that you can go through and you watch videos, and then you take little quizzes, and if you get to a certain level on each of the quizzes, you can earn a white belt, a green belt, a black belt, and a master level for any one of these. And they've got Gmail and Docs and Calendar and Sites and so forth already available. And what I've seen, they have usually the kids showing up on the main page in these ninja standings, but then you can also have the teachers right in there with them. The other advantage, too, is it's all editable. So I've seen people change it to a Star Wars theme. I've seen people use not ninjas, but like race cars, based on whatever kind of elementary school you're at. You can use your logo if you want. And then you can do it up however you like. But I think it's a really nice idea. And he talks about how you can even earn T-shirts and stickers and all kinds of things. So nice program, really. And it's already pre-made for those that want to just use it as it is.
That's excellent. I know that we found at the beginning of this year, we're Google Apps for Education School as well, and you can't assume that all kids are going to pick it up as quickly as you would think. You know, there's a lot more direct instruction that needs to happen at times, so this would be a nice way to supplement that.
Yeah, and I get asked that question a lot if there's, because I've been through the Google Certified Teacher, but also the Google Certified Trainer program, which they changed the name, and I always forget the name. It's Google Educator now, is that right, Joan?
Well, one of them is an educator, and the other one's still says trainer in the title.
But people ask me, are there programs like the old Microsoft certification for students in Google? And you know, I tell them they can take the certified trainer classes if they want, but this Ninja program is, it sounds like you could customize that to do something very similar.
So how about any of the criticisms of this, just to throw them out there, anything that might not be what you're hoping to have happen? One thought comes to mind is, and I hear this a lot because when I'm trying to encourage professional development, most of the time it's after school. Mm-hmm. And a lot of teachers are going to tell you, you know what, I have kids, I coach sports, I have a second job, and they're very frustrated that they can't quite make it to some of the professional development. Badges, however, and if it's online,
right,
gives them that opportunity, and it gives them a chance to shine even though they may not be able to make it to those after-school things. So, that's the one problem that I hear in professional development all the time, is that they just can't make it to those sessions. And I really like this idea because it's through gradation. It's not like it's all or nothing.
I think you're talking about some of maybe the downfalls or pitfalls. What you bring up about time is absolutely right, and that was what led me in the direction of asynchronous professional development online at your own time. One of my concerns is that if we are to honor professional growth points, or locally we have our own point system, and that some teachers that don't necessarily need the professional development are going to kind of whip through some of the easier ones and kind of maybe take advantage of that. But I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing if they're, but it's just maybe not appropriate. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly. And then you need to kind of maybe think bigger for these teachers. How about badges for life experiences or life skills or things that they go out and they learn on their own and may not have been in a prepackaged program?
Yeah. I
know, we can learn so much on our own just using the internet, and it'd be nice if there was a way for them to show that they do spend time learning things outside of school hours, and they would be very thankful for that opportunity as well.
I think somebody today that I was talking to about this was just making a comment about, well, wouldn't it be nice like if you gave them a challenge that they had to write a blog post and get 5 people to respond to it or something, and give them a badge for that, about bringing people into their PLN and, maybe, rewarding that. So not necessarily that they have to do something, but they have to get other people to respond to something that they've done.
Well, you can buy followers. That's what my students always tell me. When they see how many followers I have on Twitter and stuff, they're like, "Did you buy those?" And I'm like, "If I bought them, I would buy like 100,000. I wouldn't buy 2,000." It's like,
right.
It's like,
go big or go home.
Right. Yeah, I could see somebody gaming the system by buying followers or whatever.
Yeah.
So our theme is not just badges, but how to get those less resistant, or I guess more resistant, or teachers more involved in. Because I know, especially flipped learning, people who are involved in flipped learning are ahead of the curve already. The research shows right now only about 3% of teachers are actually flipping. And so those teachers are already ahead of the curve, and we understand why we need professional development. How can we get teachers who are in the middle or especially behind the curve to understand the importance? How can we get them there?
Oh, wow. You just, you want the magic pill. The one conversation I just had this week with my principal really was delving into that, and it was funny because I said, well, do they realize that we actually have in the state of Virginia technology standards that they're supposed to be teaching? And he kind of looked at me, and we realized that, you know what, I bet a lot of the teachers don't even know they're there. And so I did today. I posted them. And I'm now considering writing them more in student speak, in easier for kid language, so they can understand them, and just make a poster for every classroom and say, hey, you know what? You're really teaching these skills as well. Are you ready to do that? You know, and it's kind of that just reminder, that visual reminder to say, you're kind of responsible for this. I know you don't remember that, but you know, those 21st century skills are all listed, and they are supposed to be able to teach them.
I know one of the biggest things I think is just building relationships. You know, if you have relationships with teachers, they're going to value your opinion, and they'll hopefully attend more sessions. Than I spend a lot of time in the lunchroom, in the teacher's lunchroom, and you know, and it's funny that teachers that don't ever email you or, you know, won't come to your office to ask you a question, if you're sitting right across the table from them at lunch, they're going to ask you the questions, and then you can kind of, you know, encourage them to do a little bit more, or say, hey, did you know so-and-so was also doing something like that, you know, and just kind of get that conversation started. But it is difficult with some teachers, and actually, you know, I have a lot of people that say, oh, it's the older teachers that, you know, just aren't comfortable with technology. Honestly, I have a teacher that I'm trying to convince that Twitter and having a personal learning network is an important aspect, and not necessarily just Twitter or only, you know, but he just doesn't think that he needs that, doesn't think he has time for it, and he's younger than me. And so it's not always, it has nothing to do with age, but has to do with what type of value they see in it. And so he's open to the conversation, but I haven't convinced him yet. So I'm trying to find that magic pill for him. What's going to bring him in?
Yeah, I think, too, you have to find out, have to find a hook for them.
Yes.
We had a teacher that was a little bit resistant, and I drove by school one night, and she was there at like 9 o'clock at night. Her classroom light was on. So I asked her the next day, I said, what were you doing here at 9 o'clock? And she said, well, I was grading PowerPoint presentations. And I kind of wondered, you know, well, why are you doing that? First of all, we had just went to Google Apps, so I kind of wondered why she wasn't using more of that. But then she was having the kids save their PowerPoint presentations to our internal server on the network, and then so she had to come into school to physically grade them, and didn't even think she could have put them on a flash drive. But then I showed her. I said, one, they could upload these to your Google, they could share them with you in Google Drive, or they could just create a Google presentation and share that with you. Then you can grade from home at 9 o'clock at night. And that just, you know, that was a hook. And she came to me like a month later and was like, this Google Apps thing is awesome.
And you can even comment right in the app.
Yeah. So just finding out a way to make her life easier, so now she didn't have to come to school at 9 o'clock at night to grade the presentations. She realized, and then eventually I got her away from PowerPoint, and eventually I got her away from number of slides and number of transitions in the rubric and things like that. So, but it was just finding what would make her life easier and showing it to her, and she took up with it. So.
I think we should tweet every time a teacher stops us and says, that Google Apps thing is really great. I can't tell you how many times, and sometimes it takes them a long time for that light bulb to come on. my little story is the woman who retired in December, and she came up to me. It was literally December 1st, and she came up to me in the hall, and she said, "Joan, you wouldn't believe what was happening in my classroom." And I believe it was one of the first times that she had been using Google Docs. And she said, there was a young lady who was sick, and she was writing her essay during class time, and I could see it. And she was just, I could see the excitement, and yet, you know, I knew that she was leaving the teaching profession, and she was very excited that she could see the future, and she understood, you know, what was going to be happening. But it was a great story. The other thing I just read this week, and I think it is important that as technology coaches, we have to watch how technical we get, and we need to lay that aside when we start our conversations. We need to talk about curriculum, we need to talk about what standard are you teaching, and leave the whole thing away from the technology piece. A lot of us love to demonstrate gadgets, and I'm one of them. I love to get in there and say, this is so cool, have you ever seen what this does? And that's just not what they really need to hear as teachers, and many of them, they'll shut off because it looks too complicated to them from the get-go.
Right.
And I've had to make sure that I listen to that, you know, the little person on my shoulder telling me that every time that I want to show them a really cool gadget.
Yes. I know. I was sitting at lunch today with a couple tech coaches and then a teacher, and one of the other tech coaches was like, hey, has Christy showed you this, and has she showed, and I'm like, no, I haven't showed that, because they haven't presented a reason for me to show that to them yet, because I know that I can overwhelm people with, look at this cool, I mean, after I got back from the GAF Summit, holy cow. You know, you just want to share, and, you know, they're not listening after the second thing that you say.
Joan, do you know what a C47 is?
As in no. What are we referring to?
Well, because I used to work in television, and I know Joan did as well. And when we would go on location on shoots, if we had an annoying client that was hanging over our shoulder or trying to get too involved, you know, we would always say, well, I need to go to the van to look for some C47s, or can you hand me a C47? And a C47 was a clothespin that we used to pin our gels to our lights. And so we would always just say, if that was our code for let's overwhelm this person with technical terms so they'll leave us alone. And we would always go, well, can you go get me a couple more C47s? And the person would be like, well, I have no idea what those are. Okay, well, then stay out of my way.
I love it.
Well, I think that we're all, you know, having the same list of concerns and the same list of confinement, because time is always an issue when it comes to professional development. Teachers are way overbooked with what they have to do just for the classroom. And then a lot of it, too, comes to these initiatives that get brought to us from, whether it be administrators or districts. Every year there's a new theme, there's a new initiative, there's a new program, and that weighs on teachers that they really don't want to pick up something else. For an example, we were a pilot school for a brand new grading program. And whether that has anything to do with improving instruction, I don't think so, but hours and hours of my professional development time was devoted to teaching them this new interface. And honestly, it wasn't my favorite thing to teach. And I could see the teachers sort of being frustrated that I'm being forced to go to these professional developments on, you know, something that I didn't ask for.
Right.
And we do run into that a lot. And there's nothing, you can't really apologize for it. You just have to say, this is where we are. We're going to have to learn it together.
Yes.
And we move on.
I often have that conversation with teachers about, you know, you wouldn't want to go to a doctor that's not continuing his professional development. You know, you don't want to in the business profession, if they're not continually bettering themselves, they're going to be out of a job. And if we want to be respected as professionals, then we need to act as professionals and continue our own learning as well.
That's true. Many professions, including ours, have recertification, and I know a lot of us look at it as, oh my goodness, this is going to be difficult. We have to earn points or hours or take graduate credits, whatever it may be. But that's only to the betterment of the individual, and it's something to make it a positive. It's helping the kids.
Yeah.
Well, and this is a little bit in a different direction, but I'm always surprised at the amount of teachers who can disappear right after the last day of school and then show up again right before the first day of school the next year. And I say, well, I'm going to this conference in here and this conference here, and they're like, wow, don't you take any time for yourself? And I'm like, well, I feel it's important to get better, and this when the big conferences are a lot of times, and you know, what would you say to a teacher who disappears for the summer and doesn't take advantage of any type of professional development?
Well, it kind of depends on their reasons. You know, I certainly would not, someone who had young children, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But in the end, I would try to invite them to go with me to something like a Google Summit, anything that's close by, an ed camp or something, because a lot of it's because they haven't ever been. And so they don't know how that can rejuvenate you in your classroom and how you can come back the next year so ready to try these new ideas.
Yeah. That's a great idea. And here in Indiana, we have tons of summer. The state actually sponsors different schools putting on e-learning conferences, and they're free to, as I think the most expensive ones are like $50. So, you know, it's not even a financial at that point, you know, and they're all over the state, so you can find something close. So definitely encourage inviting others to join them.
I just invited a whole group of teachers today. I said, does anyone want to go and apply for a particular professional development opportunity here in D.C. At the museum? And you need to apply before the end of this month. And they really encourage people to come in pairs because, of course, that's where the collaboration comes from. And so I wrote all my teachers right away, and I said, anyone want to apply with me? This looks great. And so I'm hopefully going to get at least one. Because I want to go.
Well, and I know the local conferences are great, but I go to ISTE every year as well, and I'm just always like, how can I not get other teachers to go to it, because it's such a valuable experience, and I know there's lots of reasons why. And then I went to FETC this year in January, and it rivals ISTE. It's a little bit smaller, but it's still a great conference, and I thought, well, if I can't get them to come to ISTE in June or July, maybe I can get them to go to FETC in January in Orlando, and then they can get a you know, because once you've been to one of these conferences and see how many sessions are there, how many people you talk to, how you can grow your PLN, it's hard to, you know, not to go to those.
Right. Right. I'm actually very jealous of everyone. The other tech coaches in my school are going to ISTE. I cannot because it is my family vacation this year. So I'm sad. But I am going to InstructorCon, which is Canvas, our LMS, their big conference. So I'm excited because those big conferences are where you get your inspiration for new ideas and make new connections. So. And I do think it is just that they've never seen that.
Well, we also need to talk about the role of administrators and whether or not they're willing to fund teachers going to these, because at Troy, you know, it's expensive to go to Orlando. it's time out of the classroom that a lot of teachers don't want to take, and they have to pay registration. It's just cumbersome all around. So we got to have administrators willing to say, yes, I'm going to set aside some funds for professional development. Yes, some of these places are far away, but we know that bringing those outside ideas in is going to really enthuse the staff and do something new to the teaching in this building. And then offer some turnaround training, too, for those that go, say, hey, you can offer us a professional development day by bringing some of those ideas back and sharing them. Yeah. It's tough, but the finances are a big part of it.
Right.
They are
for a lot of teachers.
Well, and I'll have to say I've gotten very good at finding ways to, if you present, obviously your registration is covered.
Mm-hmm.
In most conferences, I won't mention a nearby conference that doesn't cover your. And I was really mad at them last year, but I won't mention who they are. But most conferences cover your registration, or there's other ways to go. For ISTE this year, I'm not staying at one of the conference hotels because they're much more expensive, and I found a hotel just as close as all the conference hotels, but not as expensive. So there are ways to, if you're dedicated to going, there are ways to make it cheaper.
Right. And you can go virtually. FlipCon's got, some online, not all of it. But what I like is if you can catch it during the live stream, then you're also there when the tweets are happening, and you're there, seeing it when everyone else is getting the ideas, and it's a little bit better than watching a recorded version.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. FlipCon is coming up in June, and if you can't make it to Pittsburgh, join virtually. And I know a lot of people who joined virtually their first year, and they said the next year, I have to go. It was a great experience, what I got just from watching the live sessions, that I felt like I needed to be there. So, go to the Flip Learning Network website and click on FlipCon and join virtually if you can't be there in person, because there's a lot of people that make connections that way as well.
I really appreciate that they do that, because our school system, due to snow, will not be out until all of these are over.
Oh my! When will you guys get out?
June 25th.
When do you go back?
Well, we are lucky. We don't go back until after Labor Day.
Okay.
So we are very fortunate in that regard.
Oh my.
Because, I'm done May 29th. Not to rub it in or anything, but I'm done May 29th.
Us too.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Troy.
Oh my.
Yes, we haven't even taken our tests yet, our state tests. We're still full swing.
Yeah, we're winding down.
Mm-hmm. But, the models of professional development out there, of course, we've had Kristen Daniels on here that flips professional development, and her website is out there for anybody who wants to look at that model. The SAMR model is one that we look at a lot for anybody who is, if Christy, you're going to grab that one, SAMR.
Yes.
It's kind of a way of looking at professional development in defining it for someone. And I like the levels with the SAMR model, because you can talk to a teacher and say, so you ask the students to do a PowerPoint rather than drawing a poster. Okay, so where would you put that on the scale? Is that substituting? Is that augmenting? Is it modifying? And they see it right away. Right. And they say, oh, all I was doing was substituting this for that. I see. Oh, maybe I should have thought of doing something higher level. And it's very much like Bloom's. Mm-hmm. But it helps guide your conversation as a tech coach, and it's because it does look like Bloom's, teachers immediately relate to it, and it's easy to understand. So if you're familiar with it's SAMR, and certainly you can Google that and you'll find it in a variety of ways, but even a poster of it when you sit down to have a tech coach conversation is helpful to even guide you as the coach to walk through that conversation with them when they're trying to come up with a lesson.
Absolutely. We've been using the SAMR model all year. And actually, something that really helped us is we're also rewriting our curriculum using Understanding by Design with Wiggins and McTighe. And it really, my aha moment was when we got to authentic assessment and authentic audience in the Understanding by Design. And that's how you get to redefinition, is when you have that authentic assessment and when you're trying to find that authentic audience. So that really helped solidify that for our teachers and find examples for them, especially in like the area of math.
Thank you. I need help with that area, as we discussed before the show.
I had a student come to me yesterday and say, he goes, if I can find the answers to a worksheet online and I can find the exact same questions and the exact same answers, is that cheating? and I said, I gave the teacher correct answer and said, if it's not your work, then it is cheating. But I wanted to say, if your teacher's dumb enough to assign that, go ahead and do it.
Well, there's so many savvy kids too. If a teacher uses the same test year after year, a lot of times that's already been posted, and the teacher is unaware that the kids already have it up there. They have their own little personal learning network on how to pass a class. So they have to watch that, especially the high school kids are very savvy with making that available to everyone. Mm-hmm.
And there's plenty of YouTube videos on how to cheat on tests and things like that. And so if you want to learn how kids are cheating on your tests, go to YouTube.
Right.
Yes.
So of course, the better option is you make something that is more geared toward an audience, and it's more creative in that way. It's not going to be anything that they can copy and use again.
Right.
And I like that SAMR model and using that. And a lot of teachers stay in substitution, but at least it's a start. And you could say, well, you're in substitution. Now let's move it beyond. Let's keep going. So.
Perfect. Well, I don't know if we've solved the problems that are out there with professional development and all the limitations, but I certainly know that it's how you approach it. And I think Christy is the one who said it was the relationships, and it's got to be that before anything else.
Yep, absolutely.
So Christy, how can my listeners find you if they want to know more about you or get in touch with you?
Well, my Twitter is probably the best way, at @CESteffen, STEFFEN. I do have a blog. I'm not great at keeping it up, but it is just christysteffen.org. So you can check that out as well. And I always have good intentions of keeping it up, but it gets past me a little too often.
So thank you, Christy, for coming on. We appreciated your insight, and I think it'll be valuable for the listeners.
Great. Thank you so much, Troy.
It's great
and
to
it was
meet
nice
you,
meeting you, Joe.
All right.